So I've been doing this for a long time, and right from the get-go when I was at Finger Lakes learning horticulture, because I always wanted to learn about conservation, but I didn't want to be a forest ranger away from people and like to be around people. And so horticulture was the way to go, where I was going to actually be able to do some things with landscaping, except that I wasn't learning anything about the environment, other than some soil science and weather conditions and things like that. So it was great to be able to take a few other classes and try to integrate the two of them. And where Finger Lakes was way ahead of others was in the integrated pest management studies. So that was something that I left college with, those specific techniques, and was able to apply it to the company that had hired me right out of high school, or right out of college, Ted Collins. And I worked there for Ted Collins for 13 years. It was a really great mentorship. When he sold his business, I waited a year and started my own, and he's always continued to encourage and coach me. So he let me build the lawn care department on his money, and I made a lot of mistakes on his money. And so that was really a great way to launch the business and get right into how do we fertilize without broadly treating the weeds and all of that. And just educating people on the fact that chemicals affect the other microorganisms in the soil, and we need healthy soils. Just that little tiny niche of a habitat is so important. So now we're going into bigger areas. How can we get rid of lawns and create a much more diverse habitat? Yeah, diversity, we talk about this all the time too, within our own company. Because I do have to also talk about the culture of our business. And the people that are working with us really want to be outside. They love to work with their hands. And it's never been a career that most people would say they were going to become a landscaper someday. And it's also been interesting through COVID and that how difficult it was to find employees. And other people in my industry complained constantly about how they could not find anyone to work for them. But being a woman-owned business, we had a lot of women working with us. They don't hire women, the other businesses. We also had a lot of minorities, and we have some leaders within our minority group that was able to recruit, and we've never felt that we had a shortage of employees. So we are absolutely thrilled. A diverse culture, diverse habitat, it all works out, everything contributes. So, for years, I've always told people that we live on lakefront property, even if you don't literally see it. And this property is actually views the lake, and I guess we would consider that having an effect on the watershed. But the really awesome thing is that they love that view, and they don't like all the lawn, and it's no homeowners association. So we're starting to see a lot of changes in homeowner associations, and that is a rain garden. It's a perfect area to collect the water, but also the hill just gives it a lot more interest. And it's definitely within that lake watershed. Has anybody heard of H2O Hero? It seems to get popular and then it goes away and then it pops back out again. But the website is good. Of course, not as good as Canada, Lake Watershed Association. But you can be a hero too. And we just want people to constantly think about what can we do to incorporate this. There's another one in Canandaigua at the bottom of the hill. It's a wet area. And the homeowner hated seeing it get mowed in the wet season in the spring. It just looked terrible. So they were able to put in a gorgeous rain garden and enjoy that. I'm going to ask you guys what kinds of questions you have, because I don't want to be too broad. How deep do we get into different plants? But just thinking about what is a rain garden, cattails are a rain garden. They're the best functioning rain garden there is. and being able to preserve, conserve areas now as part of the development process. Things to think about. It doesn't have to be a hard, difficult cottage garden look. It can be something as simple as stop mowing. Who's doing no mow May? Okay, we got one.
Well, I haven't been able to mow because my yard's wet all the time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I guess I have.
So are you doing no mow all year?
No. We just up here about a year ago, and so we're still getting used to it. But I got a really wet backyard, so I do have questions about
Okay, you're wet. We can definitely talk about all the options that you can do there. And so with no mow May, it's a great concept, but by leaving everything up for a few weeks and then coming in and mowing it, now you're destroying a habitat that you just established. So what I ask is that you designate an area to just not mow and just do it that way, rather than building up and creating this entire habitat and then whack it right down. Thinking about how you're situated and how fast that water comes down and what the volume is. And it doesn't have to be so complicated with rain gardens, but I do have customers that want to know exactly how much water is coming off their roof, and they want to capture that amount of water in their garden that they're putting in more of an engineering design, which is important when you're doing new builds, especially commercial complexes. But most of the time, we pick a wet area and just go, okay, this is perfect. We can plant some plants here. It doesn't have to be really overthought. This is an example of a typical wet area. Does yours look like that?
it. It has.
But the one on the left is coming down from a hill. And you can see this is that same property. Coming down from the hill to new build. So we were in a tiny little complex and had another homeowners association. But we absolutely had to have a place for the water to go. So in this particular case, we did put in drainage, and it does connect to the water system. And then just made it look like a riverbed. And that is definitely becoming much, much more popular. Instead of mowing, waiting until it smells when you mow it, because it's so long. Let's just think about not even planting, but just putting in some rocks and make it look like your typical creek when you're walking through the woods in the middle of summer and it's dry. So that's our goal there. Functioning riverbeds. This one, I keep talking about the smell because this particular client was the maintenance company that worked at this huge condominium complex. And all they ever got was complaints from the homeowners. They wanted to be around the pool, but then the grass would get really long and they would complain about that. Then of course they complain about mosquitoes and that. So they couldn't mow typically until almost July. Now it's really long and now it looks horrible because you've got it all scalped. And so they asked, how can we do something here? And so what we decided was we put in a lot of annuals and perennials. And they said that this is the first year that they just got compliments all the time. Instead of complaining about the swamp invading them and the mosquitoes, they saw the birds and the butterflies, and it really just changed their entire attitude. And the maintenance guys too, they just, what an easy way to solve these things. And I think this is one of my messages is less is more. Really don't have to overcomplicate it. Here's another one as well. They were mowing this constantly, and it looked like the lawn in the summertime. So now we've got a hard pan soil with, when it does rain, rapidly coming down that hill, and it's ugly. Just stop mowing it. And all of a sudden, now, not only was it dangerous to mow, I can't believe that contractors were doing it, but look at how much prettier, greener, healthier it is than the lawn, just by not mowing. Here's another situation of customer just wanted some advice on what could they do on this slope that was constantly overgrowing and they didn't want to mow it. So it was a simple solution. 2 different kinds of perennials that are very assertive, iris and the daylilies. And they bloomed at different times of the year. And over the years, some areas became more iris, some areas became more daylilies, because nature doesn't keep everything in perfect balance. But they really did enjoy that. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my experience with commercial projects. And these are all demonstration projects. So the Rochester Museum, several years ago, had gotten a green grant to do everything. It was amazing. Permeable pavement for the parking lot, permeable concrete for some of the sidewalks, permeable flexi-pave it's called, which is recycled tires, and that is then porous for the walkways where the kids would be running and playing. It's so much to walk onto. And then, of course, the part I got involved in was we did a green roof on the pavilion. We've done several green roofs over the years. Yeah, I could give you a whole list of all of them if you want to go. And one of my favorites is it's Frederick Douglass Library. It's actually on top of the library at school number 22. And all the kids can see it out from their windows. So now they see birds and butterflies up on this roof. And you can actually see it a little bit from South Avenue when you're driving, when you're at the hill on a stoplight. So we planted things that were high enough for people to be able to see and just get a general idea. Those are very expensive options. Putting in green roofs takes a lot of engineering and making sure the infrastructure is all there. But in a case like that where it is absolutely helping to, one, cool the building, it's hot, and it's supposed to also keep it warmer during the summer. But they had to put in a new roof anyway. So the extra expense of putting in something that hopefully won't ever have to be replaced and maintaining it has been very minimal. We go there once or twice a year, just check and see, are there weeds taking over? And if there are a few weeds, so what? Because again, unless it's invasive, we're fine with it. It's still producing an environment that is good for everybody. And just seeing green, this is one of my favorite sayings, seeing green prevents being mean. And so many studies about just the therapeutic and academic enhancement just from looking out a window and looking at greenery. So these kids are really fortunate. So anyway, back to rain gardens. So we have rain gardens there. We have major drainage pipes that were put in with the construction, and then put the green roof, and mostly native plants. So because there have been very few native plants available, it had been difficult for architects. Like this one is Tom Robinson. I just love working with him. He's at Bergman now, but he's been at several different ones, and he's a leader, has been for years, in commercial projects and trying to get them to do natural ecosystems. And so the good news is that more and more natives are in demand, because we're demanding them, and more nurseries are starting to grow them because people like me are buying them or demanding them to grow. And I do have to brag, our garden center now, we bought it almost 15 years ago, and there's hardly any natives, of course. And immediately I started getting rid of burning bushes and things like that that were invasive that they actually sold. And they're still for sale. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, so we got it to about 50% native. And it's been a real struggle to get it up to 80% right now. This year we hit 80%, and it has been our goal. Have you heard of Homegrown National Park? Okay, so I'm going to throw out some of these different organizations, and hopefully that will hit home. But go on their website, Homegrown National Park. There's so much information that you can, and there was Doug telling me, so my mind's going. He actually spoke at Finger Lakes College just a few years ago. I don't know if you were there. He's an entomologist. I love entomologists. really fascinating people. He only studies caterpillars though, moths and butterflies. He doesn't study beetles, other kinds of critters. And so he has created a list of plants, native plants, that support so many caterpillars, whether it's moths or butterflies. So you can look at an oak, and it hosts hundreds of different kinds of caterpillars. But you could look at a Japanese red maple, and it hosts 0. So you have ways to make choices based on some of these plant lists. Okay, all right, what is this plant contributing to our environment? And I wish you would also do something on spiders. I like spiders. Ash trees, for example, losing all those ash trees. Yeah, those burrows in the bark are perfect spots for all kinds of little insects and fleshy spiders to live. And the whole point is going back to how many insects are needed to eat in 3-week period during the nesting season. It's just unbelievable to what they need to consume. And you can be providing it right in your own yard. So I keep digressing. I think that's how the museum, you can stop by, walk around, see what's going on there. I do have to talk about Saunders Finger Lakes Museum. Has everybody heard of it? Who hasn't heard of it? Okay, all right, there's still quite a few, and I'm like, it's got to stop being a secret. So it's a property in Branchport, and it's an old school property that acres and acres on the wetlands. It's actually at the mouth of Cuca Lake. So the stream that feeds Cuca Lake is right on the property, goes through wetlands, and the property in and itself is an educational place all by itself. Now they have a building that we tore down because it had asphalt in it. We're hoping to reuse it, not asphalt, asbestos, thank you. And that building is now built, and the next thing is going into the exhibits, and we hope to be open next year. So if you ever get a chance to at least go out there, check out the grounds, some of the trails, and it's on both sides of the main road, up where the school was, and then across the road there are trails and wetlands and boardwalks, and it's just beautiful. So that's been a long time coming. But anyway, one of the examples that they have done is some turf pavers. So instead of putting in a lot of parking lot, this is another advice. If any of you have influence with different businesses and they need to replace their pavement, let's put in turf pavers, because it's not as hot. Heat island effect. It really makes a huge difference, besides the water permeating through. And we've used it on a lot of homeowners' properties because it's really muddy and they need something where they can drive on with their little mowers and all that kind of stuff. And here's another property that we put in an actual functioning dry riverbed. And the reason it needed to be functioning is this is a tiny little lot of, it's several acres, but there's only a little area that could be built on. Just one small section. The rest of it is hills, and it's in the town of Harrington. And Harrington has conservation easements. So they were not going to allow them to cut into the hill. They had a very small footprint on what they were able to disturb. And so this was one of the things as the architect was working to get approvals, brought us in to help with the environmental aspect and do some proposals on how we would definitely manage keeping this as natural as possible and not affect the watershed. 2006. That's when we did that one. Here's another one I'm really proud of too. RIT is another front runner for the colleges that have been having a lot of demonstration types of projects over the years. The last, they got provost who's in charge, Bill Dessler, and his wife Rebecca Johnson. I'm throwing these names out because you might see them on Facebook. Follow them, especially Rebecca. They are real environmentalists and made things happen. That was several years ago, and now it's just become part of their natural assumption, every building that they're gonna do, how are we gonna build in some green infrastructure, including green walls, green roofs. So that college has done an amazing job. And DEC. So because all of the pesticides that I had been involved in, and when I say all pesticides, I mean limiting it, but every pesticide that we use, are highly regulated. So right now we do lawns for spot treating, so we have a lot of regulations. And because of that, and trying to teach other companies how to do IPM, the DEC just became like a natural extension of our resources. And over the years, as we were starting to do more projects on watersheds, calling them and getting their approval. It's amazing how many people don't know you need approvals for kind of construction right near the water. We did a huge stream in Henrietta for a development, and we literally transplanted an old farm stream that had creatures living in there, turtles and all kinds of things, and the plant material. Army Corps of Engineers got involved in that one. So it's amazing all these regulations that you would not even know about. So we were able to inoculate the new stream for the stormwater collection for this new development, and using the old, it was fascinating. And then also to learn how fast it's during Katrina. We had put in all these dams, check dams all the way through this stream. It was 1,000 feet. And Katrina blew them all out. And one of the things I remember learning from DEC is just that the check dams slow it down. So by the time they get to the silt fence, which is the last defense, it didn't do anything to the silt fence. So I got to really see how things work in a physical engineering kind of aspect. Nature is definitely showing us some really great projects. So I say this because Town of Canandaigua is so much more strict than Army Corps, than DEC. And I made a mistake, and I'm going to share it with you. It's a very painful, costly mistake. We had a client, you can see on the left, the wall was starting to go away, it was just starting to tilt. So I knew, talking with the DEC, as long as I wasn't working in the water, it was not going to be an issue. But what I didn't know is that Canandaigua doesn't allow you to replace those types of walls anymore. You cannot put in another break wall. And the client did not tell me that they had already repaired it once. So you can get grandfathered once, but you can't again. So we got to stop work order on this. Scared the heck out of us. I mean, they're so serious. Oh my God, you might go to jail. It's just crazy how law enforcement will make you feel. And then you just call them, you talk to them like a real human being that actually cares, and now they're your best friend. So we went through, it took months for us to be able to get back, and we had to tear down the break wall that we did start to put in, because the other one crumbled as we were trying to replace it. So we started there, and we had to literally stop, and once we got all the new engineering plans approved, we had to go back and remove that and put in this kind of wall stone, now riprap, and plants. And I'm just showing that because I like to have fun, but I worked really hard on that, and I deserved on this beautiful piece of property. And just thank God it's done, because it took months and months to get approvals and engineers and understanding where the mean water line is 15 feet from, and I still don't get it. That's why we have surveyors. But ultimately, he ended up with more property, because the way that was built, we could go out into the lake. The whole goal is to slow down the water action as it's hitting, versus hitting a break wall and then blasting off and affecting somebody else's property. So this works. And I learned a lot from this particular project. So I'm very proud of the fact that it was like going to an expensive college. So that's what it is. So know your regulations and know that the town supersedes the DEC and our Board of Engineering. I always thought it was the other way around. No, wrong about it. So here's another developer. He is a lot of fun. Aristo Development. Stacy Harlan Bees. I love saying his name. Harlan Bees. He puts in a lot of nature types of habitats in his places. So he has this ugly drainage in between in this development that he's putting in. And so we decided that we would put in a wildflower meadow and not mow it and have all these plants to help buffer. And oh my God, it came in so well. And he hadn't sold all his lots yet, but people were coming in now and wow, this is the kind of neighborhood that I want to live in. So he understands also the value that the environment brings to helping you sell your properties. So it's so nicely established, all those gorgeous plants. Cardinal flower, lobelia, the blue coreopsis. It was amazing to me how well this mix actually came in. They don't always come out like this. So I want to warn you if you're doing wildflower seedings, it's not always what you hope and picture. But this one was. It was great. And then the mowing guy came. Oh my God, it was just devastating. Yeah, that's how I felt. It was just awful. Wow. The residents were running out after him, but the mower was just about complete when they finally stopped them. They're screaming at him, what do you know? I know. He didn't know because they don't know. That's a whole other conversation that we have to have is who's going to be doing the maintenance and having people understand the aesthetics and maintenance of not mowing and how important that is. Same with shrubs. I see mowers mow shrubs, I call it. They mow all the little sculptures. And no, plants need to be free and natural. Anyway, here's the good news. We just let it go for a few weeks and it came back. So those plants were well rooted. It was great. So he didn't have, the poor mowing guy was going to have to spend a lot of money on redoing this if this didn't come back. So rain gardens. Again, some of them could be designed where there are actual drainage. And this is where I personally think the best is doing the dry river beds. So you can actually put in pipes, which is where all that rock is at the top. It comes down from the hill to funnel it down through this dry river bed that we installed. And of course, all the native plants. Does everybody know the pink one?
Joe Pye.
Very good, Joe Pye. And then the other yellow one, it's tall. It's a rutabaga. Looks like sunflowers, like a black-eyed Susan, but only a different cultivar. Anyway, I'm just going to try and show you a few plants as we go along because they're so cute. Here's another property that we did with irises and buttonbush, and I should have had a new photo put in because I stopped there yesterday and it's doing so well. So the button bushes are really quite large. It's filling in beautifully and the client is thrilled. So otherwise, what was she going to do with this wet, shady area? And the deer didn't eat these. So I'm trying to take note of what deer absolutely won't eat because there's so many things that they say they won't eat, but they do eat. Yeah, very frustrating. So iris, buttonbush are true winners, absolutely. Phytostegia, which is obedient plant, another great winner. So this is University of Rochester, and the head of maintenance for the grounds worked for us for several years, so now we have a great relationship with them. And whenever they need some designing for small little projects like this, but they wanted to have a demonstration project and show the water that was coming down from the hill, they actually put in drainage, and the students put the plants in. So it was fun selecting them, and then he sent me the picture once it was all done. And they're constantly adding new projects like that at the University of Rochester as well. This is a client whose rain garden, I think she did a great job of kind of disguising the drain. So you can't tell, but that's really a rain garden. But you see the gutter, it actually goes right into a drainage system that pours into the river here, little river with all the plants around it. And she just disguised it with a lawn, simple, because nobody wants to look at a gaping hole of a pipe. And then she did a similar thing on the other side of her property. She was thrilled with it. And this is the one, though, I gotta tell you, she wanted to know exactly how many gallons we were going to calculate and save. So I think for her own sake, she wanted to be able to tell people that I have protected this many thousands of gallons of water. So we did the math. We did our best to try and figure out 1,000 square feet at 1 inch per hour in a really terrible storm. Yeah.
Question, so the downspout that leads into irrigation?
It goes right into a pipe.
Okay, so what happens in the summer when we hit a dry spell? Would it be more prudent to have a rain barrel and then she could turn on the spigot and it would feed water to it?
If she wanted to use,
Would that be an option or no?
she just wanted to get water off the roof in a environmental sustainable way. I don't think she wanted rain barrel.
I was just trying to think, how could we expand that natural water?
But it is working, so it's not that we need to save the water and reuse it. We are using the water as it comes out.
Yeah, I think maybe my question would be, would these plants survive? Would the plants survive if you hit a dry spell? Would she then have to water it in
No.
order to keep it a
No,
regular?
so that's the other thing is we're making sure you're picking plants that are extremely hardy, they can handle the wet. And there are a lot of plants that can handle the wet in the spring, and it's normal that they will dry up. So vernal pools, things like that, that are just spring-oriented wetlands, and then they dry up. So the red maple is one of my favorites, and it can sit in water, and then it can be completely dry in the middle of summer. So there's several plants like that. The other thing is, once it's established, the native plants are just so much hardier. It's pretty much that simple. So it might take a year or two for them to really take off. So you're gonna have to water a little bit initially, depending on the weather. You have to be a gardener to really understand, does this plant need water or can I leave it alone? Plants talk to you. They do. Come to my garden center. I wanted to show this off because here we are at the Wood Library, and this is what you guys are seeing out here. And it's just exciting to see these kinds of projects happening and more outdoor rooms, more environmental space for everybody to connect with nature. This is the Victor Farmington Library's education garden that they were able to raise money last year. And we pulled out some of those pavers. Over here you can see that green spot. I'm like, let's just get rid of that on the little walkway. And then we're able to put in some grasses and create a little buffer, rain garden, as it comes off. But more importantly, and they don't have the benches out here yet, is to create a little bit more of a room feeling instead of sitting out on a bench looking at a parking lot and cars pulling up. So now they have this peaceful garden, and it's all natives, 100% natives. They would not allow anything other than the Japanese maple that was there already. We kept it because it has nice shade, but everything is native. And they're tagging them, and they're doing classes also about pollinator plants and things like that. American Beauties, if you see that logo on any of the plants at the garden centers that you're working with, they are truly native plants. And I've been challenged on this, so I really love working with American Beauties because there are plants that are named after other people's names. So their regular penstemon, for example, and I don't think this is actually American Beauties, but I'm just going to give you an example. When I go to these native symposiums, They say that the actual native will support the pollinators then, and that the cultivars will not. So, one, American Beauties finds plants or other people discover them out in the field, it is just a mutation. And so there are a lot of cultivars, true nativars, or true natives, because they were found in the field. So that's a true native. And then a nativar would be something that was bred from that plant, but slightly different for different form of flowers, different colors, things like that. And that's where we start to get into, all right, is this really contributing to the environment? And most nativars are, but we're also finding ones that are bred to change the flower structure. Raspberry ruffles, echinacea, so pretty. So don't buy it, because the butterflies can't get their little roasts in there. And there we talked about the National Homegrown National Park, and I really think that was one of, he was a major influencer to me. And that's constantly going in this movement now. It is completely national, and if you go on, you'll see maps of where different businesses and homeowners have created their own homegrown national park. You don't have to go to a park to find nature. It's right there. Just a couple quick plants, but there's so many. Do you know what that pink one is? Anybody else know? That is one of the most fragrant plants in the summer, and it is the milkweed. And that one is the Incarnata swamp milkweed. There's another milkweed that's orange, and it likes dry soil, tuberosa. Then there's another milkweed that is the one you see normally out in fields with big leaves and the big little pods. What'd you say? Sorghum. Yeah. What's the Latin name on that one? Yeah, see, I never said Syriaca. All right, common milkweed. And then there's others that don't normally even grow around here, but just understanding that you can select milkweeds for your property on a dry hill, and then also down in the lower area and use the swamp milkweed. And that beautiful red flower, have you ever seen that when you're walking in the woods? Or on the edges of ponds, that's lobelia, that's cardinal flower, and it is stunning, absolutely breathtaking. Tall, bright red, hummingbirds love it. And it likes wet, or fairly wet. It doesn't want to be right in the middle of a pond. So there's a difference between wet feet, soaking wet, and submerged, all right? Here's a couple other plants that hardly anybody sells, and these have become my absolute favorites. Bakura is the one on the left, and that green foliage, it spreads and fills in as a gorgeous ground cover. It's one of the first things to bloom in the spring, so it's blooming right now, and it is so bright. And then the other one is the Golden Alexander. And this one I find out in the fields, walking in the meadows. I get really excited when I see it because it's just, it looks like Queen Anne's lace, only yellow. And it blooms now, and it blooms for a long time. Very tolerant. Both of those are tolerant of almost every soil. That's another reason I like them. They can handle some shade, they can handle the sun, they can handle it dry, they can handle a little moist. There's not that many plants that are that versatile. Those are a couple of my faves. We've been working with a client on her hill and trying to just get wildflowers. I said it's not always successful. And the one on the left, you can see that there are some blue lobelia and also some black-eyed Susans. But do you recognize the purple plant? Okay, that's purple loosestrife. Isn't that pretty? So, and we maintain this for her. So this is how we've decided to handle it because she wants color. Is we just get in there and cut those down before they go to seed. So She gets to enjoy them, and as soon as they start to fade, we're cutting them out of there and getting rid of them so we won't spread even more. Because she also has swallowwort and a couple other things that we have to constantly maybe this little, yeah. So a wildflower meadow should not be a garden. This client is teaching us that she wants a wildflower meadow garden. And it's been several years. We've actually been working on this property for 3 different owners over the years, over 20 years. And so I'm proud that each owner has brought us in. But this one in particular, she's been here for a few years. She just wants color. And color at certain times of the year because she's in Florida, the other time of the year. And then during the summer, she's visiting relatives. So it's okay, we need color during April and May. We need some in July. And then we need it in September and October. And yeah, it's a lot of balance, a lot of research, and trying what will do well and what won't. The one on the right, that's easy, just a nice, beautiful cottage garden with Beatrice, one of our favorite wildflowers, the tall, skinny purple one. Others in there's some coreopsis, but mostly there's daylilies, and not everything is native in there, but it's definitely got a lot of color. And then utilizing grasses. I realized I don't think I put in pictures of grasses, but that is becoming a mainstay of the garden for the texture, for the winter interest. So switchgrass, absolutely one of my favorites, and there's so many different varieties. There's the blue meadow that gets this tall, bluish foliage. Then there's Shenandoah that has reddish foliage and gets to be about 3 feet tall. Lots of different cultivars now, but they're still nativars. So they are not, they're still definitely conforming with the seeds for the birds and the flowers on the grasses that most people don't even notice. There's actually flowers on the grasses that the pollinators are going after. This is that button bush that I mentioned at the other client, and that one's, I'm constantly trying to get everybody to have that. So that wet property in here in the back, if it's big enough, there's large button bush, and now they have cute little dwarf ones that only get to be 3 to 4 feet too. So some are gonna be 6, 7, 8 feet tall, and which is what I love about the nurseries, is they're constantly trying to improve upon what clients demand. What are they gonna buy? Why did they buy it? Or why didn't they buy it? It's too big. Okay, it's too big. Let's see if we can, breed another one that's small enough for everybody to utilize. And that's where we live, over on 441. I definitely invite you to come. The name is Mopolo, but we're also, it's on a farm. So we're transitioning to the bee-friendly farm and gardens because we have lots of demonstration areas, wildflower areas, rain gardens, a huge barn that was built in 1900 and it's been restored. So it's a very fun place to be around. The house was built in the early 1900s. So a lot of history. Some old antique cars there because my husband is not into plants, but he's my partner. And he has a shop there and he's a collector of cars. He's not allowed to have that. But there's a Oldsmobile, I think it's 1930 or 39. Anyway, so there's stuff for everybody to do and for the kids, especially in the barn. People love to go around the barn. Anyway, I want you to come out and visit us. We do feel like we're making an impact over the years. Everybody that works with us is so excited to constantly learn about what are the new natives that we have. Right now, one of our designers mentioned when they go out to some of the properties that we've been planting the past couple of years, she's having a hard time figuring out what they are because you get used to identifying the same plants over and over for so many years that are used in the landscapes. And now it's going to be like, oh man, what is that? And trying to find out and discover and then see which ones are doing really well. And that's what we're doing. We're collecting a list. I feel like we're constantly in research mode, even though we're out doing the work and trying to make a living too. Can we open it up for questions? Yes.
My wife and I volunteer for Ontario Pathways. And this is going back to the very beginning, when you were talking about making like a driveway or something with recycled tires. And is that environmentally friendly? Is it doable? I really would like to spread tires on the trail rather than
Oh.
buying gravel.
So there's some sustainable ways to do that. One, the recycled tires, it's really expensive, and that's flexi pay. That's for cushioning playgrounds and all that, but yet it's still porous. Then the turf papers, which we already talked about. Then there's asphalt, which again is expensive, permeable, and there's still, over the years, finding that it has to be constantly cleaned or it gets clogged and it doesn't permeate anymore. But my husband, again, I like gravel, and we have a muddy area, so we brought in a couple truckloads of millings from an asphalt company mixed with gravel. So that would go to the waste to begin with. And so that's somebody that's recycling something that you cannot really break down in landfill, but it binds together very nicely with all of these little rocks mixed in. And that would probably be the best bet from an economic standpoint, because I also think a lot of these places are trying to get rid of the stuff. There's not very many asphalt companies driveway that do that invested in the equipment to chop it all up so it's easily spreadable. And yeah.
I have a question. I live just west of a couple acres of grassy fields, and we hear so much about deer ticks now. I think the grassy fields, the tall grass, is a problem in terms of tick population. And we have a lot of deer,
And the deer are
uneasy about tall grass.
So can we get rid of anything that's really invasive and a pest? Can we get rid of the deer? Some people would say no. We can't get rid of the ticks. You just have to protect yourself. But is it opossums that eat ticks? Is that true? Do you know any other things that eat ticks? Possums?
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe we can. So I'm going to tell you that cutting down and getting rid of an entire environment because you're concerned about getting ticks, I don't see
Well, ticks
that.
are on mice first before they're on deer. So
Yeah,
you get rid of the deer, so the mice carry ticks.
but you're not probably gonna, they're gonna be, for that on the sides of the grasses, and they say not to wear shorts like I do every time I go through. And then I check my body to see if I have ticks. And I hate it when I got on the dogs. I can't pull them out. My husband's really good with this take her out or no, it's just awful. But anyway, that's a good question. And we're still looking for a balance of nature and what can we live with. And I say most of us can and will live with the ticks because we're not going to get rid of them.
The other comment I have is you mentioned the phrase of people buy what they want. And I have some neighbors that want all mosquitoes dead. And they get sprayed down the base of the house. And what else would they kill? Who knows?
Yeah,
My
no,
neighbor right next to me, I said, you don't have to have a lawn that looks like a golf course. He said, but I want to.
yes.
What
So
do you
it is changing
Four-step method?
perceptions. Yeah, it is. It's changing perceptions. What they can do is they want a nice lawn, but they don't have to use as much pesticides. So that's a given. There's healthy lawns through Cornell Crop Extension on how to do that. And it's easy. And we have proven it because we have never blanket treated any lawn in 30 years. And when a customer originally would tell us they want us to treat for grubs, and we would say, no, we're going to check and see if there's a threshold of grubs, and we're going to treat that area only if we find them. So we had customers that refused to work with us because we would not blanket treat. Like, we're not that kind of company. And now the trend is definitely IPM. So you see a lot more companies offering it. So perception is, how do we get them what they want, maybe? Or also, how do we get them to accept that a meadow is absolutely gorgeous and it's alive with birds and the
activity and the peace that it gives you from just sitting there and absorbing all of the nature sounds and watching all of the activity in there completely takes away the stressors. But somebody, that doesn't want to learn, you're not going to teach them. But others that have open mind are definitely on their way and changing.
What about, we have a very shady garden and a garden deer seem to love. So any suggestions for ground cover or plantings that would deal with both of those things, deer and shade?
Yep, so the native ferns, and there's lots of native ferns, different textures. So when I look at a shade garden, it's all about texture and some color variations of the foliage. Don't plan on a big flowering area. So that, but then you can get some variegated cultivars of things like Jacob's Ladder that'll at least brighten up the darkness. Solid Steel. That they have a variegated one. It's not native at all. It's from Asia. Don't buy that one. I made that mistake before, before I knew. But that's a plant that just will really take off. So it depends on when you say ground cover height. Solid Seal gets up to about 2.5 feet tall. That papyrus that I showed you, it does need a little bit of filtered light, not complete darkness, but if you've got areas. Oh, there's a whole list. Oh, what I forgot to mention is you can go on our website and we have an ebook on there. It's a woman, one of my customers called and said, can I use your company to write an ebook about how to turn lawns into meadows? Sure. She did this for her graduation at Brockport, and it is available online. You just go to our website and then you go to where you find the book and then click on it and it'll come up, and then it has lists of mostly perennials for sunny areas, shady areas, wet areas, dry areas. We don't have a list of shrubs. It's just for meadows. Yeah. It's really good. Yes. Yeah. In fact, Finger Lakes Native Plant Society. You guys know that group? So I sent my list over there to get approval, and it was approved. My spelling was incorrect on a couple things. I was say something about that. But yeah, it's a great resource. Yeah. And then they start to get picky though about Finger Lakes native plants versus is it native in New York. But anyway, all the plants that I used are native in New York, not necessarily in the Finger Lakes, but they were an acceptable region for her to sign off on it. Yeah.
You said wildflower garden should not be a meadow, and I was just curious, like.
It should be a meadow.
It
People-
should be though.
Not a garden. And when people start treating it like a garden, they start to get really antsy, stressed. Oh my God, this is a weed, this is a weed. You can't treat it like a garden. Unless you have a lot of money, you can hire me to come in and cut the loose stripe and things like that. And the meadows are constantly changing. So even though you have a successful meadow at first, I'm sure that one that did really well, if I go back now, it's a few years later, I don't know what's in there. There's probably goldenrod in there now at this point because that's natural. That's something that grows here all the time. Do we like goldenrod? Yeah. Do we like when goldenrod covers up everything else? No. So we whack it down in July so that the other things have a chance to compete with it. And then the goldenrod still blooms, but it stays a little shorter. So there's different ways to manage it, not consider it a garden. Just get rid of the invasives and then we're happy. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. We have a kind of large field that we leave as a meadow. We've never planted anything in there. It was natural when we bought it, so we just try to maintain it that way. But I'm always trying to figure out when the best time is to cut it so that you're not interfering with biodiversity. I feel like if you cut it right before winter, now you've lost all your seeds for everything over winter. If you cut it in the spring, you're in danger of hitting the baby deer that are laying in it and the rabbits.
Oh, I was thinking about the cute little insects that are hibernating.
That's
Yeah,
true,
like
and then
the
the
deer.
summer, so when is, and if we don't cut it, we used to actually cut it every other year, but we started having a lot more problems with invasives like creeping thistle and crown vetch and all this other stuff. We used to try and cut it every other year, now we're feeling like we have to cut it every year to keep some of those at bay, but when is the best time to cut them up?
So spring, before things really start to flush out, when it's just dry twigs go in there to cut. And maybe, how big is it?
It's several acres worth.
Okay, several acres. And then the other thing about the saving and preserving the critters in there, if you could do 1/3 of it one year and let the other go, but you're gonna, if you have the other issues with the invasives, you might have no choice. But theoretically, 1/3 of the area on a 3-year basis is what you should be doing. Our meadow, because the ash trees have seeded everywhere, so our wildflower meadow is now, and I want ash trees, but I don't want that many. So it's really starting to take over, and that's becoming a bigger issue because now they're really woody plants. But usually if every 3 years you can keep the woody plants from taking over, and that's really the goal.
And if it's too wet to get it in the spring, what would be the next best choice? Like midsummer, or are you now cutting down all the flowers for the pollinators? Like I just always
I
struggle.
think if you, again, just do
Just
parts
do
of
parts
it,
of
if you can rotate.
Okay.
So then the invasive plants, so another issue I keep getting now is mudwort and the Canadian thistle. And, you know, I don't like chemicals, but if I can't get it under control, I am spraying to get it under control so I can reseed it again. And that definitely, it's amazing in one season how quickly it can just come in and just take over. So frustrating. So, yeah, if we just let our meadows go, whatever in nature is going to take it over, but it's not going to be native. And that's our struggle at this point, is we can't just let it go. Yeah.
So I use an app called Picture This for my identification, and it'll tell you if certain species is native and invasive. But I was just wondering, is that the best way to go about identification, or is that even accurate?
Has anybody had any discrepancies with what the apps tell you and what it really is? Yeah. I can't believe how many times I have found that is not a blueberry. So, to answer your question, if it comes up with something, then I don't trust it. Go down to Google search and then search a couple of different sources. So, extensions, county extensions, university extensions, those kinds of places typically are pretty credible. They're not always up to date on newer things, but they're credible. And then, yeah, that for Finger Lakes Native Plant Society, absolutely send them an email. Yeah, and they like that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I have 2 questions. With the storms we had last year, really knocked out a lot of big trees, at least on the east side of the lake, and I wondered if you have a good recommendation for trees that can handle wind and sun, because there's, the root structure is gone and the trees are gone, and so that's question number 1.
I'll start with that then. A lot of the trees, and maybe I'm wrong about what you're seeing, are typically by themselves or just a few around them.
There were big stands of trees, like whole stands of oaks and ash.
So did the oaks go or the ash?
Everything. There was a
Was it a
little sheer-
microburst?
Yeah,
Okay.
microburst.
All right.
But they need to be replaced. How do you?
Because the oaks are definitely something I would always go for because they are hard and strong and mighty, the mighty oak. So, yeah, that would be my first to go to. And there's 2 or 3 different species of oaks, from the red oaks to the white oaks, depending on the moisture. Yeah.
Thank you. And my second question is, we're talking about these invasives, but what do you do with them once you pull them out?
Good question.
Because you don't wanna send them to the transfer station where they get mulched with
Yeah.
everything else.
I've just been throwing them into a compost pile and letting them die, but yeah. I try not to use that in my
Right.
native areas. It's okay in my vegetable garden, but yeah.
I have a suggestion, depending on how many you have. What I usually do is get a black plastic trash bag and fry it
Yeah.
on my lawn, or on my driveway.
Yeah.
Let it just sit there in the hot summer sun and cook it till it's nice
Solarize
and
it
dead.
so that it's dead. Yeah. Good idea.
Or burn it.
Yeah.
I typically don't put it in my old compost pile because I feel like some of those invasives are so hardy, their seeds don't seem to die in the compost pile. And then you use your compost around your yard and you're just inoculating yourself.
Part of it is if you can identify what they are and get them before they go to seed too.
Yeah.
So garlic mustard is so easy to pull. It's everywhere, but it's so easy to pull. It really, it comes right up nice. So I'm constantly, if I just see one or two, I'm pulling it out. In fact, at anybody's yard that I go to, I will pull it out. Because if it's in flower. And then swallowwort. That is one that I'm really having struggles with because even if you pull the plant out before it seeds, you still have that root that you cannot kill, and it's really in there. Yes.
I want to take more of my share of questions. We have an area along the roadside where we have a lot of sweet pea. Now, is that a natural local plant?
So because that plant actually just grows where it's gravelly and hardly anything else grows, it's not invasive. It's not on the invasive species list. Let it be, unless you
Do
try.
the pollinators like the sweet pea?
Oh, certainly.
There's a place.
There's a beekeeper at BME engineering firm, and he told me his favorite plant is loosestrife, purple loosestrife for the bees, because that really attracts pollinators like crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, but it's invasive. It's not from here, and he's neither am I. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's from Germany or.
Have you ever noticed the city of Canandaigua is proud of their burning bushes in Kershaw Park? They're really gorgeous in fall.
They are, but we need to get rid of them.
You gotta have politics. You gotta have political connections though.
Well, that one is on the invasive species list, definitely, and it can reseed. And I know that people have said, I've never seen it when I'm out walking, but I was at Cupid Lake the other day and there was some on the edge of woods. And the client was like, I didn't plant any burning bushes here, but here it is. So that's why. Is it really going to escape from a parking lot area and out into the field? So that's the decision. How likely is it going to? But because there's so many other really cool plants that are functional, like these viburnums and itea that turn bright red in the fall, why would we want burning bush? It gets mites, scales, and it does not create any beneficial things to the rest of the environment. So, yeah, get rid of it. Replant. Yeah.
We're also looking to replace some trees. Is there anything faster growing than oak trees? Because
Yeah.
they take forever.
Tulip tree.
Tulip trees.
Tulip tree is amazing. And then the red maples.
Okay.
These are rooms, those are two really fast growing.
Because the oaks will take 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
Something.
Actually, black bolt goes really fast.
Black goes? Okay. All right. Thank you.
But thank you so much, Sir Lori, for your wonderful presentation